Hi guys, this is Jude from EasyTex. In this tutorial, I'll be demonstrating an alternative way to clone your hard drive for free in case you want to upgrade your hard drive or you want to switch from mechanical hard drive to SSD. This video is in response to several comments I received from previous videos where I showed how to clone your hard drive for similar purposes also for free. It appears a number of viewers have experienced some issues while following the steps in those videos. First is the issue of getting a malware notification when downloading or installing the application. Second is the issue of the cloning running into an error after the computer restarts, hence not completing the cloning process. Third is the question of disk size. Is it possible for the destination disk to be smaller than the source disk? This is particularly crucial considering that a good number of users might want to clone from larger mechanical hard drives to smaller but much faster SSDs. And finally, the issue of ending up with an extra disk partition or extra disk partitions after cloning or not having your recovery partition present. I'll be addressing these key issues and also providing you a few additional tips to ensure you have a successful cloning process. Of course, if you have other issues, you can also leave those in the comment section and I will try to get to those too. And now without further ado, let's jump right into it. Okay, so beginning with the first issue, which is the issue of getting a malware notification during download or installation of the Minitool Partition Wizard. In the description of the initial video and also in the description of this video, you will find a link to our blog post where we described this process in details and also shared links to two free versions of the cloning application, versions 10.2 and 11.5. Here I'll be downloading the two versions for demonstration purposes. So in this MediaFire page, just close any pop-ups and click on the download. Here I will also download version 11.5. Now after downloading, open the download folder and run by double clicking, starting with version 10.2. Hit yes on the user account control. Here select your preferred language and hit OK. Accept the license agreement and hit next. 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 You can create shortcut if you want. Hit next and then install. Here once you hit finish, it asks you to select a browser. When you do, it just pops up the premium and more recent versions of this app. Now I will uninstall this and try to install the more recent version 11.5. Here we have the same process. Select your preferred language and hit OK. Then as soon as you get to the next step, Windows Security will pop out this threat notification. Here just click on the notification for more details. Here it shows that a browser modifier threat has been found. It's called win32/pre4. More details here shows that this is generally designed to modify some browser function without adequate consent, possibly running some ads on the browser or installing some plugin. Here you can simply select this remove option and click on start action to remove this threat. You have to do this really fast because it disappears shortly. Personally, I have used both versions several times over the years and have not come across any effect that poses a threat to my devices. Alternatively, as we saw earlier, this is not an issue on version 10.2, so you can use that version for this process. Both versions work equally well for the cloning process, but version 11.5 supports more languages. Okay, before we get to the second issue, let's quickly see how the cloning process works in practice. Here I'll be using version 10.2 for demonstration. The steps are pretty much the same for version 11.5, so you can also follow up with that version. Here after installing, first attach the new drive you want to clone to your PC. Then launch the app and select Minitool Partition Wizard Free. Here select copy disk. The copy disk wizard would pop up. Hit next. It then asks you to select the disk you want to copy from. Here I'll be cloning from a bigger SSD to a smaller SSD just to demonstrate that this is possible as long as the data on your source disk does not exceed the capacity of your destination disk. In this case, I'm cloning from a 240 gig SSD to a 128 gig SSD. Here, if we check the disk properties, we see that the used space is just about 28 gigabytes, which is much less than the 128 gigabyte available on the destination disk. So this cloning process should work fine. Once again, you need to ensure the destination disk is large enough to take all the data from the source disk. So here I will select my 240 gig as the source disk and then select my 128 gig SSD as the destination disk. It warns me that all data on the destination disk will be destroyed. Ensure you have your backup if necessary, then hit yes to proceed. Here you have the option to either fit partition to entire disk or copy partition without resize. The fit partition to entire disk option automatically adjusts the partitions on the source disk to fit into the destination disk, while copy partition without resize simply copies the partitions as they are to the destination disk. So if the destination disk is larger than the source disk, then there could be some unallocated space when you use the copy partition without resize option, which is not a problem. You can simply initialize the unallocated partition and use it as normal storage space. However, in a situation like this where we are copying from a larger to a smaller disk, then the only option is to fit partition to entire disk. That way the partitions in the bigger source disk will be adjusted to fit the smaller destination disk. In fact, Minitool doesn't even allow you to choose the copy partition without resize option in this scenario. However, for cloning from smaller to larger disk, you can use any of the two options. If you are not sure which option to use, then you can simply try one of the options, and if the cloning process fails, then you can return and try the second option. Here I will hit next and then finish, and that will take you back to this page. Here on the top left corner, simply hit apply. It then recommends that you should close all applications. Do so and hit yes to proceed. Now it starts the cloning process, and shortly after you get this notice saying operation copy partition cannot be completed because drive C is being used now. This is simply because there are still some background processes running on your C drive, so the process can't really continue. Here it offers three options, of which the first is likely the only option that will work. So simply restart your PC and then allow it to perform the cloning process upon restart. And this brings us to the second issue that some users have reported while using this method. Some users have encountered various errors that prevent the cloning from continuing after the restart. Such errors could be coming from the initial options we discussed, that's the fit partition to entire disk or copy partition without resize. So I would suggest trying both options to see if one of them will get rid of any errors you might encounter at this stage. Another potential source of such errors is your PC BIOS configurations. The BIOS configuration of your computer might not be suitable for the boot up cloning process. And one way to get around this limitation is by cloning your drive externally. This is basically the same process that we have seen so far. However, this time we'll be detaching the source disk from the PC, then attaching both the source and destination disks to a different PC, where we will then install the Minitool partition wizard, then select the source and destination disks appropriately and proceed with the cloning process. Here you need to ensure you select the disks accordingly to avoid loss of data. Normally disk 1 is your C drive, and then the other attached disks will be numbered in the order of attachment. I will advise formatting the destination disk ahead of this process so that it appears as a blank disk. That way it's easier to identify. So here my source disk will be disk 3, that's the 240 gig SSD, and the destination disk will be disk 2, that's the 128 gig SSD. With that, the rest of the process is just as we saw already. Takes me back to this page where I will hit apply, hit yes to start the cloning process. Now, unlike in the previous case, here the cloning process would happen right within the app and without going through any BIOS configurations. So this way you can have a more dependable cloning process. At the end, it should say the process has completed successfully, and then you can now attach the new drive back to your PC. Finally, on the issue of having extra disk partitions after the cloning process or not having your recovery partition. First, on the extra disk partitions, we remember that during this process, we had 3 disks. Disk 1, which is the C drive, then disks 3 and 2, which are the source and destination disks respectively. However, when I now check my file explorer, I see 4 disks, meaning there is now an extra disk partition, which intuitively is coming from the newly cloned destination disk. To see this more clearly, open your search and type create and format hard disk partitions. Click on the match from the search results. Here, unlike in Minitool, Windows starts counting from disk 0. So here I have 0, 1, 2 as the 3 disks. Here we can see how Minitool adjusted each partition in the original disk to fit the destination disk. So here the E partition corresponds to G, the D partition corresponds to this unlabeled partition, and the recovery partition is absent. I will get to that in a moment. But just to mention here that the new partition, which in this case is D, is the system reserved partition, which is normally present but hidden in File Explorer. This partition becomes visible after the cloning simply because Minitool has assigned it a drive letter. To make this partition invisible again, we simply need to remove the drive letter, and to do that, right-click on the partition and select Change Drive Letter and Paths. Then on this pop-up, click Remove and hit Yes to complete the process. You should notice that the extra partition has disappeared from File Explorer. To make it visible again, you can simply come back here, select Add, and then assign it a letter, and that will make it visible again. Now, for some reason, the Minitool partition wizard doesn't clone along the recovery partition. So we need to recreate this manually. It takes some steps, but fairly straightforward. You can pause the video or rewind when needed. So with the new drive attached back to the laptop, open your search and type create and format disk partitions. Click on the corresponding result to open the disk management interface. Here I will create a partition where I will store the system recovery file. To do that, I will simply right click on the C drive and select shrink volume. Here I'll be making a 1 GB partition, so I will type 1000 and hit shrink. In a moment, you should see a 1 GB unallocated partition. To initialize it, just right click and select new simple volume. Then on the new simple volume wizard, just go with the default configurations until you get to finish. Afterwards, it should now say healthy primary partition. For this next process, you will need a Windows ISO file, either locally on your PC or a Windows USB installer. I have made a tutorial on how you can make this completely for free. I will leave the link to that down in the video description. So attach your USB with Windows installation file or open your ISO file. Here, open sources. And then in the search field, type install.esd and hit enter. Here, right click and select copy. That's to copy the ESD file. Then come back to your C drive and paste the file. Afterwards, open your search and type cmd, run as administrator, and hit yes on the user account control. Now here type cd space ... and hit enter. Type that once again and hit enter. That should take you back to your C drive where you placed the ESD file. Next, type the following command or copy and paste from the video description and hit enter. Now this will show all the Windows editions contained in your ESD file. Here I'm running Windows 11 Pro edition, so I will check the index number that corresponds to Windows 11 Pro. which in this case is 6. Next, copy the following command from the video description, paste, and change the source index number to match the index number that corresponds to your version of Windows. So if, for instance, you are running Windows 11 Education N, your index number would be 5. Here I'm running Windows 11 Pro, so my index number is 6. So I will leave it at that, hit enter, and wait for the process to complete. When completed successfully, you should have a file named install.wim in your C drive. Now cut this file, open Windows folder, open System32, open recovery, and then paste it here. Afterwards, return to the C drive and create a folder named mount, just as shown on the screen. Then open the command prompt as administrator once again. And copy paste the following command. Hit enter and wait for the process to complete. Afterwards, go back to the mount folder you initially created on the C drive. Open Windows, open System32, open recovery, and then copy the winre.wim file, return to the C drive, open Windows, System32, recovery, and paste it here. Now run the command prompt as admin once again. And here type reagentc space / enable and hit enter. Now this will enable the recovery environment for your Windows. Once enabled, type diskpart and hit enter. On the diskpart prompt, type list disk and hit enter. Here we have the disk 0, which is our C drive. Now notice that under the GPT parameter, there is no asterisk sign. So the drive is MBR and not GPT. If it is GPT, you will have asterisk under the GPT parameter. Now if yours shows GPT, meaning you have asterisk under your GPT parameter, then pay attention to the command where you need to make a modification for the GPT format. Here, irrespective of your disk format, type cell disk 0 and hit enter. Type list par and hit enter. Now this shows all the partitions on your disk. Here we can see that the recovery partition I created earlier is partition 3. So I will type cell par 3 to select the third partition. Next, type det part and hit enter. Now if your disk format is MBR like mine, type set space ID equals 27 and hit enter. If yours is GPT, copy paste the command from the video description and then hit enter. Once successfully completed, when you type det par again and hit enter, your partition type should change to 27, meaning it has become your active recovery partition. Now type exit and hit enter to exit from diskpart environment. Finally, type reagentc space / enable to re-enable the recovery environment. And that completes the process. Now, if you check your recovery partition from disk management, it should have changed from healthy primary partition to healthy recovery partition. And with that, you have created your recovery partition. And that is it for this tutorial. Give this video a thumbs up if you found it useful and share with anyone you think might want to see. Drop us a comment if you have any questions or feedbacks. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon for notifications on future tech support videos like this one. Thanks for watching and see you in the next one.